Hi, everybody. I'm Charity Counts. I'm the Executive Director of AMM, the Association of Midwest Museums. Thank you for joining us today for the 2022 AMM Best Practices Award virtual celebration event. Before we begin our program, I want to invite Carmen Hillenberg to offer a land acknowledgement.
Thank you so much, Charity. Let me get myself set up too. There we go. Hello, my name is Carmen Hillenberg, Collections Manager at the Evansville Museum of Arts, History, and Science in Evansville, Indiana. Since 2020, I've had the privilege to serve on the Board of Directors with AMM. In this era of virtual meetings, when digital spaces may substitute our physical sense of place, it is important to redirect our attention to the land we each occupy in this moment and honor the indigenous people who have called it home. Because I'm located in Evansville, Indiana, I invite you to join me in acknowledging the communities of the Miami, Peoria, Quapaw, Shawnee, Osage, and Kickapoo tribe, and their elders, both past and present, as well as future generations. I wish to recognize the strength and resilience of these and all indigenous peoples who have endured and continue to steward the land that I am privileged to call home. And in spite of the devastation of their land and lives as a result of colonialism, the misrepresentation of their cultures and heritage across time, including by museums and the ongoing struggle to be recognized in contemporary narratives. Please also consider this acknowledgement a commitment from AMM to continue to reach out to and learn about the many indigenous communities and cultural centers located with connection to the Midwest region. Thank you.
Thank you, Carmen. Before we begin our program, I want to take a few minutes to address some housekeeping notes. First of all, you're welcome to have your video on if you choose. It's okay to also leave your video off, whatever is comfortable for you. But please keep your audio muted until we prompt you to unmute at different points in the program. This event is an opportunity for all of us to celebrate our recipient, but it's also an opportunity to learn more about them and their work. Please feel free to comment or ask questions in the chat, and we'll get to those as soon as we can during Q&A or during the program whenever it's appropriate. We encourage you also to react to what you're hearing today. There will be moments for audible applause, and we'll let you know when that's time. But we also encourage you to use the reactions tool in Zoom, which is located in your menu at the bottom of the screen, where you can offer thumbs up or clapping, in response to things that are said or shared today. You can also wave or snap your fingers too with your audio turned off, even if we can't hear you and you have your video on, we can see you. Finally, I want to point out that we have an ASL interpreter with us today. Because we're in Zoom meeting, I don't get to determine where he's located on the screen. You can pin or drag and drop him to where you want him on the screen if you have a preferred location. And if you have questions about how to do that, you're welcome to use the chat to let me know or one of us know, and we'll help you. For those of you getting to know AMM for the first time through this event, I'd like to provide a little bit of background information. Founded in 1927, we are one of the very first museum associations in the country. We serve an 8-state region, and our community includes traditional museums and historic sites, as well as art and cultural centers, science centers, zoos, and libraries. One of our favorite new programs started during the pandemic, and that's our virtual awards celebrations. It is a joy for us to be able to celebrate today's recipient, all of our 2022 honorees, through events that bring together their peers in the museum community, as well as their staff and colleagues, family, and friends. Thank you to all of you who joined us today live, and to those who join us later via the recording and get to take it in that way. now like to just give a shout out to everyone involved in today's program. First, I'll introduce, or I'll just, give a shout out to our representatives of the project being recognized today. When I say your name, just wave, and then you can introduce yourselves a little bit more later in the program. Hannah, Norris, Mike, David, Gilbert, Jeff, and I don't see Lester yet, but thanks for being here. You'll learn more about our guests during the program. I also see that we've got a couple other board members from AMM online with us today. You have likely introduced yourselves in the chat already, but go ahead and wave. I see Leslie and Chuck, and obviously Common's a member of our board. Thanks for being here. That's it for opening remarks. I'll now pass the mic back to Common, who will get the awards presentation and the program started.
Thank you so much, Charity. All right, let's get started then. The Best Practices Award recognizes museums and cultural organizations whose innovative projects have pushed beyond the status quo and led to the advancement of best museum practices or the establishment of new practices at their institutions, allowing them to better fulfill their missions. Projects receiving the Best Practices Award offer new ideas or approaches to museum work or the museum experience, and replicable models for the profession at large. This year's Best Practices Award recipient has had a profound impact on their community, and the feature project is one that we feel represents a replicable model for collaborative community programs for museums across the Midwest. And best of all, it is centered around something we all love, food. Breaking Bread in McLean County is a collaboration involving many organizations. McLean County Museum of History, this year's award recipient. BN Welcoming, a coalition of organizations in Bloomington, Normal, Illinois. Design Streak Studio at Illinois State University, and Heartland Community College. The committee felt this project was inspiring not only for its purpose and results, but because of the collaborative model employed. Strong community relationships can produce great things, and we feel that the museums of any type and size can benefit from learning about the approach in McLean County and exploring similar models locally. This is why we are here to celebrate their achievements, but also to learn. This project holds a very special place in my heart, not only because I love to eat, but the fact that I believe food transcends words. As a Chinese American, my culture highly values everything related to food. In fact, in Cantonese, instead of asking, "How are you?" we ask, "Have you eaten yet?" And making a meal such as wrapping wontons is a family affair. Young and old are involved, and breaking a meal together is a sacred bonding experience. We all know the power of food. When you travel to an unfamiliar region, you may not always remember everything you saw on your visit, but you will always remember that one delicious meal you had. Food is truly a gateway to learn about other cultures. We may disagree on some issues, but everyone can agree that grandma's casserole is out of the world. Food allows us to catch a glimpse of other cultures and opens our minds to experiencing foreign concepts and traditions. AAM is pleased to present the 2022 Best Practices Award to McLean County Museum of History for this extraordinary project. And at this time, I invite everyone with us today to unmute or use your Zoom reaction icons to join me in a round of applause in honor of McLean County Museum of History, its leadership, staff, and community partners. All right, thank you. And thank you. I now invite Hannah Johnson to say a few words and start the program.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Common. I do want to just say that it was such a privilege and an honor to be able to attend live the annual meeting in Milwaukee earlier this year, but it's even better to be able to share space, even a virtual one, with so many folks who were part of this project and made it happen. So we're going to go ahead and share a few words about the project and then give you a little bit of a taste, as it were, of the video programming that is a result of many months of work. So we'll go ahead and start the show. So we do want to do our own land acknowledgement, knowing how significant it is to acknowledge the space that we are occupying here in McLean County. So we do want to acknowledge that the land we call McLean County is the ancestral land of many Native groups, beginning with the Paleo Indians 12,000 years ago, and most recently Algonquin-speaking groups, including the Kickapoo, who were forced west from this area in the 1830s. Others include, but are not limited to, the Peoria, Kaskaskia, Piankashaw, Weya, Miami, Mascoutin, Odawa, Sauk, Meskwaki, Lenape, Potawatomi, Ojibwe, and Chickasaw nations. These lands were and are the traditional territory of these Native nations prior to their forced removal, and these lands continue to carry the stories of these nations and their struggles for survival and identity. We want to make sure that it's known that this statement was drafted by the McLean County Museum of History in collaboration with Lester Randall, tribal chairman of the Kickapoo tribe in Kansas, and Nicole Boyd, former director of the Native American House at UIUC. We also want to take a moment to acknowledge the recent passing of Yesenia Navarrete. Yesenia was a known name here in Bloomington Normal for her and her family's ownership of Taqueria El Porton. We'll actually be able to hear from Yesenia at the conclusion of this program, a short clip, and it was an unexpected passing in September 26th of this year. And so this presentation and this award really now is in honor and memory of her.
I'm Mike Matika, and I'm retired from the Laborers Union. I'm a board member of the McLean County Museum of History. I'm involved with Not in Our Town, Not in Our School, which is a 27-year community collaborative to stop discrimination and hateful activity. And Not in Our Town, Not in Our School has been a partner with BN Welcoming, which came together 3 years ago to address how we treat and welcome immigrants to our community. Other partners included West Bloomington Revitalization, the Mennonite Church of Normal, First United Methodist Church in Normal, and as already mentioned, Design Streak and Heartland Community College and the museum. This project kind of came to fruition. Let me also acknowledge Mary Applington, who's part of Being Welcoming, who's here with us here today. This project came about as we were talking with the Immigration Project, which works statewide to welcome and facilitate legal housing and other needs for immigrants. And they raised the issue of perceptions of immigrants, how they're treated in the community, how they're welcomed. And so we tossed around for a couple months an idea of how do we construct a program to address that issue, and came to the idea of looking at immigrants from 100 years ago, Italians, Irish, Germans, Swedish people, and ask them how they were treated, and go to their descendants, and then interweave that with immigrants today and how they're perceived in the community. Part of this really interesting and enticing was this food idea, that we talk about what are the foodways that come from these various parts of the world, and what foodways have become part of our culture here in the Midwest. So food became that common linkage to bring us together. And again, this intent was to look at the immigrant experience and see that, sadly, in American history, it's not always a welcoming experience. The quote you see here is from a local minister in 1909, a Methodist minister, talking about immigrants previous to 1909 were high-class Northern European, and with an interesting food angle here, poured them into this land like grain into a hopper and been ground into this wonderful civilization. But for the last 30 years, we've been getting more immigrants, but not of this class, lower breeds, Slavs, which is a direct derivative of the word Slav. And the last line there, the quality has degenerated, and they're referring to the Austrian Empire. Austria exports no goods, but can send us 400,000 every year until doomsday. Well, that's my grandparents who were fleeing the Austrian-Hungarian Empire to come to the United States. And this was the country they were coming to, where this was the attitude toward them, that they were somehow the dregs of civilization. And so this recurring story of portraying immigrants in a low light is not something new in our culture, but again, something that this fine man of the Methodist Church thought about my grandparents when they came to this country. And so that, in a sense, became our mission with this collaborative, again, with the museum, with the multiple groups in being welcoming, and this wonderful social service agency, the Immigration Project. And it turned into be a very delightful series, as you'll see in the video, but also very enlightening, because again, that common linkage of food drew people together to really reflect on ways that people contribute to our culture and contribute very directly in food ways and culture that enriches us all.
All right, thank you, Mike. So to speak a little bit about what specifically the McLean County Museum of History brought to this collaboration, the mission of the McLean County Museum of History is to preserve, educate, and collaborate in sharing the diverse stories of McLean County. And there's probably not a better, more succinct way of describing all that went into this project, Breaking Bread in McLean County, than preservation of stories, right? Educating the public, collaborating as a community, and sharing these stories out in a variety of kind of multimodal, multicultural ways. So to give us an idea, right, of Breaking Bread in McLean County, this was a 10-part online program series designed to explore stories of migration, immigration, adaptation, appropriation, preservation, and sustentation in McLean County. The series highlights the shared and disparate experiences of local immigrant and migrant communities from the Kickapoo to Congolese Americans, emphasizing universal elements including food, family, tradition, trauma, and exchange, intentionally disrupting the historical chronology in order to promote a deeper understanding of the ways McLean County has treated its past and present immigrant and migrant communities. Through the course of the 2021 series, which lasted from February to November, registered participants engaged in live monthly multimedia presentations, consistent in overall format and online venue, Zoom webinar, shout out, but all imbued with their own flavor, dependent upon the community experts involved. Each of the 10 programs employed a unique combination of live and recorded lecture, discussion and interviews, musical performances, cooking demonstrations, and more. In lieu of sharing food and breaking bread together in real time due to pandemic considerations, online attendees were given access to recipes personal to the presenters and featured in each of the programs. So we said the big word, right, COVID. It's important that we acknowledge that the creation of this programming, the facilitation of this programming, and even much of kind of the reflection after happened in a virtual space. And as many of us are museum folks, specifically history, museum related, thinking in terms of what is the silver lining, right, of a program like Breaking Bread coalescing in this crazy moment in time that was 2020. And truly it is this record, right, this historical record that we've captured, not only exploring the history of migration and immigration in McLean County, but in real time, rapid collecting the stories that folks are sharing now. And so not only were we exploring the history, but we were actively creating it. And it was a very intentional decision on the part of the planning committee, you know, as the society, right, as society opened up, as we moved through 2021, we knew it was important to continue to capture this digital and virtual record of the stories that we were sharing. And so again, upon reflection, or hindsight being 2020, no pun intended, it's really excellent that we have this rich resource that can continue to educate and edify and elevate and work towards the mission of Breaking Bread, but also McLean County Museum of History and its partners. So to just give you a really quick timeline, May 15th of 2020 was our first email out to get this group together. And then we saw this project through 2021. And so what's so fantastic is that even in the space that you're at now, you can access it from a QR code and have it right in your hand, ready to explore. As we mentioned earlier, right, this was a community feat, and no part of Breaking Bread could have happened without the community members that contributed to it. And so acknowledging all of the names here on the list in that vertical line there, every one of those people contributed their words, their stories, their recipes to this program. And those listed at the bottom were really that core generative group who saw the program through. So shout out to everybody who's joining us today and those who are away in their spaces as well. Again, it's Breaking Bread in McLean County, but the reach of an online program series like this was truly regional and so special. I do want to acknowledge that Design Streak Studio, we've mentioned before, housed at Illinois State University, is a senior graphic design capstone course at ISU. It's a research-based social innovation lab focusing on human-centered service design. It strives to facilitate an interdisciplinary environment, promoting discovery and experimentation, engaging in experiential and service learning. And Breaking Bread, its core identity in terms of that visual appeal is all thanks to Archana Shekhara, creative director of Design Streak Studio, and her cohort of students that collaborated with the planning committee. And Archana actually could not join us today because Design Streak is celebrating its 40th anniversary at ISU with a grand opening of a graphic design exhibition on campus. And so we're just extremely grateful and excited to be able to have such an amazing day between all of our partners sharing really momentous occasions. But depicted here is, again, that brand identity that was contributed to each of our programs. So you can see the through line, you can see the Breaking Bread logo, which was selected in its design, combining staple crops from various cultures in a unified bunch. The hand-drawn illustration and gestural paint brushstroke puts people at the heart of the logo, reinforcing the themes of movement, resilience, identity, all themes that we explored throughout the series. The colors you might imagine or be able to detect already are inspired by the national flags of the cultural and migrant groups that we explored. The poster design was inspired by a quilt, again, thinking in terms of symbolizing and honoring the interconnected, though distinct cultural identities in McLean County. Archana wanted me to mention that she herself was honored to host Garam Masala Box, Indian American Cooking, on September 11th, which was a day, in her words, that changed America and Brown Asian people's lives. As an extension of each program presentation, attendees received access to personal recipes, which you'll see here, and that we then very kind of, I'd say quickly in the scheme of things, have redesigned into a beautiful cookbook that's commemorative to those who contributed to the project, and is also, or will be, available to the public. So thinking in terms of especially the design aesthetic and texture of Archana's work is it's multimodal, right? It's multi-textured, it's multi-sensory is really the word that I'm looking for. And so the idea that we had this visual to pair with the oral stories that we were capturing and sharing, and then we have a cookbook now that we can have that tasting experience all inspired by breaking bread. So here is some imagery of that beautiful book. And so keep your eye out on the McLean County Museum of History for holiday sales. And then we do want to mention too that the work with Breaking Bread continues. And so we were able to gather together just recently, September of this year, for a long table inspired event. This is where we debuted the cookbook and was able to provide it to our collaborators. But it was also the first time that many of us had actually shared physical space together, even after working almost 2 years together on this project. And so that's one thing that I will carry with me forever, I think, is the fact that I had the privilege to be kind of that mediary between everyone involved in this project. And I got to go into kitchens and I got to go into sacred spaces, especially at a time when most of us were not sharing those spaces together. And so to have that physical interaction with these stories and to be able to then kind of reproduce those in a digital space was really, just such a unique and memorable experience. So we talk about Breaking Bread, and we talk about the stories that we captured and the imagery and the music and everything inspired by it. And so what we want to do now is share a little bit of a highlight reel from our 10-part series. And so you'll get, once again, a taste of each of these programs. So give me one moment to bring up.
Everyone for joining us. I am so excited to welcome you to our inaugural event of Breaking Bread in McLean County, a series that is dedicated to the immigrant experience and their stories. What pushes people to leave their homes and what pulls them into new and often very strange lands? What kinds of relationships are forged in these spaces and what tensions arise? We will be exploring these and other questions in the context of food, hence Breaking Bread, as a metaphor of a common staple we share across cultures, while also recognizing important and distinct variation.
So it is, in fact, around 1870s when we have the first record of Latinos in McLean County. And here we have documentations of Latinos working the railroads, and I'll just pull up this one census record from 1880, and you'll see here Francis Anthony, right? And Francis Anthony works in the railroad shop, and he is a Spanish speaker, the first Spanish-speaking resident that's recorded in the census here. So here in a 1980 article, owner of the Mexican Border Cantina, his name was William Robinson, and I'll quote him in this article you see on the left, Normal Restaurant Serves Mexican Food. He says, "Mexican food is going to be the food of the 80s. People are getting tired of hamburgers. You'll find a full-service Mexican sit-down restaurant in Bloomington Normal in the next year or so."
No sé, como un año, un momento en esta vida profesional cuando por fin podía como respirar y decir, okay, estamos bien, no tengo que preocuparme como antes.
Sí, cuando mis hijos empezaron a tener sus propios trabajos y como que ya hicieron su familia y aquí seguía bien el negocio, la clientela nos ha apoyado muchísimo.
Sí.
Entonces yo sentí que ya había valido la pena mi esfuerzo, mi sacrificio de cuando empezamos, que batallé con los niños.
It was very difficult because you'd see them try so hard to make sure that we didn't lose our roots. So Spanish in the household, every chance they had to save money to take us to Mexico. But it was really easy for us to just sway away from our roots. It was really easy for us to adapt our American ways because that's all we were, surrounded by, and especially up in LaSalle, Peru. But luckily, because of how big the immigrant population was up there, we did get to meet a lot of Hispanics. And so instead of like going to parties with all like Americans, we'd go with all the Mexicans. And like they mostly try to do that for us. But every now and then, of course, because of school, they also, you know, encouraged us to participate in what school activities we had before the restaurant. After the restaurant, it was really difficult.
The woman you see on the right is Mary Motherway O'Neill. She brought her 9 children over at the time of the famine. She's my great-great-grandmother, and it's from her stalwart efforts to resettle her family into McLean County that much of my interest in history stems. The group who came in the 1870s to 1900 were Scots-Irish agricultural workers. These folks were coming up to help at harvest time, when it was time to shuck corn, to help at planting time. So they were seasonal, very seasonal in the sense of when their work was under demand. And when they were not, their work was not under demand and they needed to move on to the next job, they were considered to be hobos or tramps. And they were subject to police harassment because it's interesting, the popular image, they were a person that you needed when you needed them, and when you didn't need them, you saw them as a threat to your family and a threat to your personal wealth because they'd rob you. So it was just, it was like a day and night, almost a psychosis of American society about these traveling agricultural workers. Now, a person whose family experienced much of this is Bill Givens. And one of the things that we need to think about while we're talking to Bill is that recipes and cooking, you borrow from your new kin, your new relatives, people, your families you marry into, from your neighbors. That's where our foodways come from. Musicians do the same kind of a thing. Musicians borrow tunes as well as musical styles. And Bill will be playing a blues tune. And I want you to understand that blues is a fusion music. It's a fusion of African-American use of European chords and African rhythms.
It is amazing to me that when I came to this community in 1990 to pursue a college education, there were only 3 Congolese families, including me and my brother. Today, it is believed that there are somewhere around 300 individuals of Congolese origin in the community.
Caterpillars are a delicacy.
You like caterpillar.
My son-in-law loves them.
But it's very good because it's a lot of protein. It's very good.
My story is different. I was working as an accountant back home. I first worked with Mobil Oil, and then around 2002 came the merger between Mobil Oil and Exxon. This is where we have now the new company named ExxonMobil. And I think after here, ExxonMobil decided to leave the Congo because they couldn't get along with the new government. This is why I also, when Exxon left the Congo, I decided also to try that experience because I said, okay, let's try the United States. And I was lucky, the results for the lottery, the immigration lottery, came and I was selected. This is how I get here.
Very hard to get here without that.
It was very, very difficult when I got in Urbana. Back home I was used to work in a corporate setting, and my first job that was waiting for me in Urbana was in a heavy factory job. And where you have to work all night, standing in hot and dusty place.
That's the story of a lot of Congolese professionals.
Yeah, that's the story of most Congolese.
So the question, why Bloomington? The answer to that question is coal. So in 1867, the McLean County Coal Company opened up. It was the area's largest mine. There were a number of other smaller mines in the area. But the McLean County Coal Company was started by the Stevenson brothers, including Adlai Ewing the first, right? So Stevensonville totaled 46 acres of 3-room, 1-story, quote, working men cottages. Now by 1881, we saw a total of more than 60 cottages built in the area. But we want to remain cognizant that simply, following annexation did not mean that Stevensonville was afforded the same amenities and utilities that the rest of Bloomington was, and that took time. So it wasn't until 1910 that a water main direct from the city reached Stevensonville. We'll note as well that most Stevensonville lots are deep, so they could accommodate large gardens. They could accommodate animals, maybe chickens or even a cow, to help feed the community internally.
Well, A.G. Erickson was my great-grandfather on my father's side, and he is from Sweden. The Erickson grocery store was very, very important to West Siders. And as we all know, many years ago, before the advent of great big huge grocery stores, neighborhood grocery stores were the lifeline for people. And I remember as a small child, about 5 years old, going into the store with my father. And I remember lutefisk. As a small kid, kids can be pretty picky with foods. I loved it. And you hear people say, oh, it's the most awful stuff. Well, your people didn't know how to fix it.
So the Kickapoo Algonquin tribe, we're a woodland tribe from the Great Lakes. So some of the history in the books aren't correct, and none of them were written by Kickapoos. So I think some of the history that is going to be told today and in some of these slides are some things that you probably haven't heard or seen before. So that's part of us preserving our way of life and dealing with the assimilation of colonialism back. And that's when some of the historical trauma comes into play, because some people don't understand that we're taught that way, and it's still taught here very much that what our people had to go through. I mean, our people talk about it all the time, even from stories from their grandparents to their grandparents, basically our ancestors, what they had to go through. So Matiqua is how you say corn. And this video that you're about to watch is how we kind of prepare corn. Up there you see it boiling. And then in this video, you're going to see them actually spooning the corn. And this is just Indian corn. So this is passed down through the generations of our people. This video was given to me by one of our elders, and it just shows a group of them spooning corn.
This is an aerial view of Google Earth of the Woodard, Eunice Woodard and Ardell Woodard family estate. At one time, it was about 300 acres. Right now, it's about 187. My grandparents, they basically farmed about 300 acres until my grandfather passed in 1967. They farmed cotton, sweet potatoes, corn, peas, cucumbers, watermelon, and other crops, including sugar cane, which they also made cane syrup. And of course, they raised chickens, hogs, and processed beef. And I remember a story that's been passed down, and my dad shared with me that They would sit around these wooden benches at the house and have a dinner, and everything would be there. And my grandfather would proudly say, everything on this table came from this land, except for the salt. So collards, right? That's my favorite. Like other greens and peas, collards represent a critical aspect of African-American heritage and culinary tradition. Personally, my favorite is turnip greens, but you can mix a little mustards in there too, but I just like to hear all the different stories from people, because what I find is a recurring theme, a common thread is when we are growing collard greens here on the west side and neighbors come by or they get involved or they get a plot and start growing, everybody always talks about what their grandmother used to do.
Well, hello there. My name is Willie Holton Halbert. I'm the author of Cooking with Love. One of my favorite things to do in the world is cooking. And this is my sous chef, my assistant, who is my daughter, Brooklyn. Hi. Brooklyn Caffey, say hi.
Hi.
You like cooking?
Yes.
What do you enjoy most about cooking?
That you get to do it with just your family and you get to make good food.
And you get to do what after you make it?
Eat it.
You get to eat it. That's what it's all about.
And I think, of course, we associate things like hot dogs and things like sausages with German cuisine for very good reasons. But there's a thing about cuisine that we have to really think about, and it has a lot to do with many of us who live in the Midwest, that food really is a type of deep memory. Well, market gardening is a piece that we have not left behind. It's a piece that actually we've regathered.
Long ago, it was my grandparents' time, but they came in the probably mid-1800s with the Lutheran immigrants. But it was about having your own piece of land and your own food security. I mean, everyone had different reasons, as you say, push and pull, the immigrant experience. They got their 160 acres there in Iroquois County, so not exactly McLean County, but not too far away and similar in some ways. And their farm was biodiverse and what we would call organic and sustainable, because that was what farms were. We're all about, having fresh taste. And now we know that taste equals nutrition. And we know about biodiversity and how that is an insurance policy because all your eggs aren't in one basket. So we're practicing similar thing on our farming and being direct to consumer, getting your stuff to either a very local market or the Chicago market. And oddly enough, what they were doing back then is exactly what our family is kind of doing now.
And coming to the United States, I was aware that I would miss my hometown, people, language, the smell of Indian soil, food, and also the air. As soon as you land in India, you get this smell and then you're like, oh, I'm home. People suggested that I should bring a few Indian clothes along with me, stainless steel utensils like plates, tumblers, a pressure cooker to make dal, a rolling pin, a garam masala box, and lots of various spice powders that were pre-mixed to make South Indian foods. So this is my garam masala box. So garam means heat or hot, and masala means spices. So my garam masala box. When you look at people's garam masala boxes, you know where they are, which region of India they are from. So most of the Indian migration to McLean County happened in the late 60s due to State Farm, Illinois, Illinois State University, and Illinois Wesleyan University, and Clinton Power Plant. Men were highly educated and women were mostly homemakers. I visited a few senior uncle and auntie's homes and recorded conversations on my phone. And I wanted to keep this raw, fair, and intimate. If it was a studio-like setup, I was concerned that people would feel like they had to be their best.
The other important effect of this practice of going to people's house, a different house every Sunday, brought that community really together. Everybody felt at home at everybody else's house, to the extent where my wife knew exactly all the ingredients, where they are kept in everybody's house to make tea. this camaraderie really is a characteristic of this community. It would be very hard to find this any other place. Yeah.
When I came to North America, I was in Toronto University because I went to University of Toronto. Over there, they have like a lot of Japanese people and then big restaurants. So I could eat normal sushi, like which you was seeing the slice. But then when I get a job here, I thought like, oh my God, I can't have any more sushi. I expected that. But then Jim said, like, there is sushi. Yeah, we can go. And then he took me to the this kind of this places, like restaurant, sushi restaurants. Then when I saw sushi all like this, can you see this is a steak sushi? And then this is like a kind of Hawaiian hat kind of wearing things and lots of tempura around here. And I thought, what? This is really what? Like a cocktail kind of thing. And not only that, this is like a hamburger sushi, they say. And this is like a burrito sushi. Yes, we do have a hand-rolled one, but this really looks like a burritos. I don't know what is different about it, but it's different. When then I thought of how it's different. My sister said when I was in Japan, I was talking about it, what kind of sushi I made it for my friends in America. She said, Nobuko, please don't tell them this is sushi. This is at least not a Japanese sushi. Maybe you can say Californian invasion, not ours. Please don't say that kind of thing. She was really, really upset about it.
So as probably many of you know, and we're basically being anthropologists here and using pseudonyms in all the things we're talking about. A restaurant that we'll call the Grand Kitchen started in 1921 here in Bloomington, Normal, one of the first Asian restaurants in the Midwest, even before Chicago. There's some debate about whether or not it was the first or not. The building lasted until 2017, 2015. This restaurant, under other management, of course, is still existing under different auspices, but they were the ones that first brought Asian food to McLean County, to Bloomington Normal. And Chinese food, there were other Chinese food restaurants came for a while and were ubiquitous for quite some time. And while I'm at it, I want to make a shout out to the McLean County Museum of History. They have a marvelous resource for anybody interested in food. They have a collection of menus that go back to 1936 from all different kinds of places. I don't know when it actually stopped, but I think it's 2016, but there may be more. But this is a marvelous resource for anybody wanting to do some work about food in McLean County.
My grandfather, Mariano Capodice, he was born outside of Palermo, Sicily, in a little town called Termini, which was coastal. And he first immigrated to the United States in 1899. He came through Ellis Island. He was 7 years old, and he came alone with supposedly a note in his pocket of the name of the relatives from Cleveland who were going to meet him in New York and take him back to Cleveland. That apparently did happen. I'm sure that he was taken care of by some of the women on the boat and transport. It was common for Italians to be involved in the produce industry. That was one of the businesses that was which was largely Italian.
I think that you'll see as this video goes on, this cooking demonstration, that there may be some Italian Americans out there that would look at this and say, well, that's not a traditional ingredient, or that's not a traditional ingredient. But I think that one of the things that's important to recognize is that the evolution of what we think of as Italian American cooking is really an amalgamation of several different regional styles. My dad says that his sauce wasn't the same as his mother's sauce, My sauce is definitely not the same as my father's, but there's been sort of a building on these flavor components and traditions that have become the kind of the fabric of our family's sauce.
All right, well, thanks everybody for indulging in that little smorgasbord of breaking bread. Norris, I'll turn it over to you for our concluding remarks.
Thank you. My name's Norris Porter, and I'm the Development Director for the McLean County Museum of History, and I'm currently serving as the Acting Executive Director while our fearless leader that you saw in the video, Julie Emig, is out on medical leave. So I have a statement from Julie that she asked me to read. I wish I could be with you to celebrate in person. I look forward to returning to my post at the museum to continue the inspirational work we are doing in collaboration with our community. Over the course of the Breaking Bread series, I was the lucky one. As the executive director, I got to have a front row seat as I facilitated each of the 10 programs. I cherish the opportunity to hear immigrant and migrant stories, the laughter, the reminiscing, the longing delivered through emotions and memory evoked by food. The experience was markedly different from the conventional practice of ethnic food celebrations in school cafeterias, events that traditionally focus on ethnic dishes, but never the stories and histories of those who cook them. In contrast, the focus of Breaking Bread was to illuminate how the push and pull of immigration migration in McLean County created heartbreak, healing, and resilience in the formation of our community. The museum's vision is to strive to create a more just community by driving new conversations and inspiring critical understanding of our rich and complex history. Breaking Bread is the epitome of that endeavor. I also want to acknowledge Hannah Johnson, the outstanding curator of this amazing series. She traveled from kitchen to storefront to market, centering the stories of McLean County residents in each meticulously crafted frame. Finally, I want to thank the members of our community for graciously inviting us into their homes, businesses, and lives. I have a final statement that I would like to tag on to our land acknowledgement. The museum is part of the McLean County Historical Society, and we have a deep relationship with the Kickapoo tribe in Kansas. In 1905, the Historical Society placed a historic marker marking the place where the Kickapoo had a stockade fort as part of their grand village in McLean County. And we own the 35 by 35 foot parcel that marker sits on. And in the last week, it became official that now the Kickapoo tribe in Kansas is a co-owner of that small parcel with the Historical Society, so that they own a small portion of their ancestral land. And with that, I'll turn it over to Charity.
Thanks for sharing that announcement with us. What a great next step for you all. Also, Julie's words, I feel like so wonderfully wrap all of us up. But I can't help but think that we all wish we could comment right now. So first, we're gonna just all unmute for another round of applause before we start to wrap up here. Congratulations, Julie, Hannah, Norris, everybody who worked on this project. What an amazing program series. Please join me in a round of applause. It's always fun to get a little bit of a peek behind the scenes, even virtually during these events. So thanks for sharing your time with us and a little bit more insight, and also getting to see some of the programs. I know that not all of us got to participate in those when they happened in real time. We have just 5 minutes left. So I'm gonna ask a question that I think is important for, just in thinking about this project as a model for other museums. And I welcome, Hannah and Mike and Norris to chime in. Relationships, they're an ongoing process. It's everything that you did clearly has formed some bonds in your community. How do you maintain and nurture those relationships that you formed during this project Are there ongoing touch points that you, the staff, the board have with community members? How are you keeping that energy alive?
I'll jump in with that. And this was not a beginning of relationships. This was a continuity of relationships. Over 30 years ago, we began the Black History Project, which was not really began by the museum, but came from the community. And we probably have the richest repository of African-American history for a small city in the Midwest because the community gathered it with great pride. And we've done the same or attempted the same with our Latinx community, with our South Asian community, with our Congolese community, and now we're trying to build a repository with our LGBTQ community. So I think, and Hannah and Norris can jump in here, these are not one-off relationships. This whole Breaking Bread came out of a long-term set of relationships and mutual confidence with various community groups.
Yeah, I'll absolutely second that. And to get to your point, Charity, too, about how do we sustain and maintain and continue to grow these relationships that are fostered. Honestly, it's opportunities like this, right? Like we've been afforded recent opportunities to kind of contextualize this program, to reflect on it, to bring folks back into the fold, right, who contributed to the program, sharing their migrant and immigrant experience, but now are able to kind of step in as a face of the series at large. And so Guibert Kimana, who we heard spoke about his experience as a Congolese immigrant, has shared space with us at conference sessions, right, presenting on this program series, the opportunity to even to create the cookbook and to reinterpret, right, this new record that we've created and curated, and even putting together the highlight reel, right, like finding the through line and making those through lines manifest in a really real way. And so just the continued opportunity to reinterpret, to re-engage, and to continue the momentum, right, of the series is exciting. And yeah, legitimately, it's opportunities like this that help make it happen.
Great.
And I think we also are trusted in the community. We're not just things and stuff. We're all about the stories of the people that own the things and stuff. And I think people in the community realize that and respect us for doing that and preserving those stories and sharing it.
That's terrific. Well, thank you so much for entertaining my question there and sharing that insight. It is time for us to start wrapping things up. I just want to say congratulations again, to the whole team, everybody involved in this project. Very inspiring. It's no wonder the committee was excited to award best practices to you all. You've definitely set an example for others to follow. And we're excited to get to share the recording of this event for people to learn more beyond today's participation. I want to invite Common to offer any final remarks before we do one more round of applause and wish our friends good luck with their next endeavors.
No, I think I'm good. I think all of us are hungry after watching all these videos. So we better just get going and get some food in our stomach.
That's great. Well, to everyone listening in who joined us live today, thank you for being here. I know it's not easy to be present for everything, but we appreciate you sharing your time for this event and celebrating the McLean County Museum of History and Breaking Bread. We hope to see you next week for the Distinguished Career Award event on Thursday at the same time. And I want to just say before we have a round of applause and hang up that for those of you who are involved in the project and representatives of our recipient and Common, please stick around for a quick photo afterward after the event is concluded. So don't leave just yet. If you're able to turn on your video too and participate in that, we'd love to have you. So one more round of applause. Please unmute, be loud, whatever you want to do. Thanks so much and congratulations. Thank you.